Hi, I am Potato, and this is basically a cold reading of my fanfiction, Bacteria. I'm working with a few people to voice the characters, so if they're not accurate, that's why, because I'm not voicing them. I will commission someone to do cover art. But besides that, enjoy this little demo of me narrating. Swap breathed out a sigh as he entered the lab, looking at his surroundings in worry. Dream had brought up a doctor's visit after the, technically, birth of the miniature him, which was lovingly given his nickname, Blue. Swap couldn't avoid it much longer, and so he finally went to the scientist for help, calling him and begging for an appointment, even though he had been warned that Sai was not nearly as well versed in medicine pertaining to biology. Swap didn't care. No doctor in his universe could know, and he wasn't sure he could trust a different universe's doctor, not when he didn't know one who was a Sans. Which led to him being at the entrance of Sai's lab, which always confused Swap. Of course, he knew Sai was a younger version of him, who acted like his papyrus did. But still, the lack of Undyne worried him, as if she was going to find him and ask him what he was doing in her lab. He looked at the sterile, white walls. He winced at them, not used to something so unnaturally pristine. Usually, Undyne's lab had at least some dust, though he understood it to be a good sign. Sai had prepared for him, even though he didn't have to be his doctor anyways. Swap still felt terrified, looking to his left to see the tiny him holding onto his blue, almost black pants. Blue looked up at him and smiled, sticking out his light blue tongue in a teasing manner. It mildly relaxed Swap. Swap took another breath, and offered his left hand to the smaller, grinning as Blue's tiny glove gripped onto his own. He then took a step, then two, then three, into the lab. He glanced around the room and almost chuckled at the lack of the familiar computer, which would have shown him whatever the cameras were saying. He felt comforted, knowing Sai had never set any of them up. Thankfully, the only thing against the entire wall of the building was a wall of tables. It looked like one of those royal tables, except with many nicks in the long wood, and it was stuffed with papers and gadgets. He peered at the nearest stairs and climbed up them, helping Blue get up each step. It was adorable how small the other was, and it was helpful whenever he had to throw it up. Swap finally reached the second floor, almost slipping on the way too clean tile floor. He huffed at it and then explored the upper floor, finally reaching Sai. Sai was sat at his desk. It looked like an office desk, though it wasn't separated from the rest of the building. Sai was typing something down, writing a document on screen. It seems he was doing a different experiment as he waited for Swap, something in his actual field of research. The reminder made Swap feel just slightly guilty, but he knew he had to, for Dream's sake. He couldn't watch the other get more worried, over him of all things. He has enough on his plate. Swap coughed into his hand, blushing as Sai let out a squeal of fear. However, he soon started to giggle as Sai almost fell out of his chair. Of course, the magnificent Swap had picked him up by one arm, carrying him while holding Blue's hand. He grinned. Well, it seems I came a little too early. He then winked at the other, letting out a more soft smile as the weaker of the two started to nervously chuckle. Yeah, you are, yeah. 10 minutes early, he said, checking the watch on his wrist. Swap nodded. Well, it is punctual to do so. Now, can we... He nervously sat Sai down, giving him a gentle stare. Sai just chuckled. Yes, we can start your appointment early. You're the first person to be my patient, Swap. There's really no waiting, unless I'm busy. You better tell Dream that this is a one-time thing. I'm not going to end up like that last Sai. He had to reset due to how much work you put on him, because you had no time to take care of yourselves until it was too bad. He gave Swap a glare, obviously not having forgotten the stories of life-saving surgeries having to have been done on the fly. Swap couldn't help but look away at the reminder. He had no say in it. Everyone knew, because Ink was really the only person who could tell if the Sai was, according to their code, smart enough to take up the job of multiple people, which obviously meant if they were confident enough to do it, which usually meant if they were confident enough to do it, which led to a shortage. Poor guys needed a break. Sai cupped into his arm, refusing to think about the subject any longer. He had things to figure out. He smiled at Sai and nodded. Of course, let's just see what he glanced at Blue, who was biting at the end of his almost teal-colored bandana. What that really is, he mumbled, hoping Blue wouldn't mind the implication. Sai nodded. Just follow me and we can take some of that magic of yours, he said with a smile, walking the opposite direction Swap did. Swap followed, a bit anxious as he was soon told to sit down on a cool metal table. As he did, he nervously glanced to his right, which held a small styrofoam tray. It held tools, newly used, but obviously not entirely medical grade, which, while scary, was something Swap knew to expect. He looked at Sai as Sai pulled on two blue latex gloves. He smiled at Swap. Okay, just the liquid sample, and then I'm going to use some of those teeny tiny needles, which are the square patch looking things, to connect you to a sort of code reading machine. It's going to read your magic and your DNA. I'll also do it for Blue and sort his own profile up, because other multiversal hospitals do actually need to see it. Swap grumbled, but nodded. He then stared at the scalpel. So, what about the knife? He said nervously, though in a more chipper tone. Sigh huffed. Right, that. I just need two bone samples in case the wires don't work, he mumbled, grabbing one of the two syringes and looking it over. He smiled at Swap. Okay, you first. Give me your arm, he said, nodding at Swap as Swap moved his arm closer to the scientist. Sai then cleaned the area he was going to use before he pricked the bone, getting through the first thin layer of it before being able to pull in some liquid magic. He then pulled out a pad of alcohol and cleaned the wound again, before slapping on a bright pink Hello Kitty band-aid. Swap didn't even mind. Hello Kitty was cute. Blue looked at Sai with a blank and happy look, not even looking nervous, as Sai picked up the other syringe and stepped over to the other. Swap smiled at Blue, who was sat on his left. Blue was sort of leaning on him, his sleeve soft as it contacted Swap's bone. Blue held out his arm enthusiastically and flinched just a little as he was pricked. Once he received his band-aid, he looked much happier, staring at it with what looked like wonder. Sai then chuckled, bringing Swap's attention to him. He was holding one of the wires. Ready? He asked, motioning towards Swap's soul. Swap gulped, unsure of himself, but still. He nodded. And it all was fine. He just took off his shirt, got some wire stuck to his bone, and then the same process happened with Blue. And it was fun to talk at Blue, while the doctor went to check on his laptop for the results. Blue was a very easy child, just leaning on him and even deciding to silently sit in his lap, not touching the wires. Easy, smart child. Easy, terrifying thing. Swap had to stop himself from pushing it away. He still felt terrified seeing Blue, because how could he have kids when magically it wasn't possible? Though he knew it wasn't Blue's fault, it's no one's fault for being born. But was Blue truly a child? Truly a person? Was he not just like bacteria? Should Swap want to cure himself of the thing haunting his days? Sai walked over to them and looked nervous. He handed Swap some freshly printed papers and sighed. Swap, he said, making Swap look at him with worry. Yes, Sai? Swap asked, looking at the other's face over with worry. Sai breathed in. So, your code is fucked. Fucked? He shrugged. It's wrong. It's not normal, not like it originally was. It formed itself and changed itself to the exact code Blue has. You gave birth, and during the few-week process your code and magic was changed. Swap couldn't understand. He didn't know how to respond or what to feel. What had the parasite done to his body? So, what does this mean for my magic? Can I still safely use it? He asked, a hand above his sternum. Sai looked away and shrugged. Yes, but that's the sort of weird thing with it. Your magic is fine, normal even, just changed. And I can't see what specific genes it's affected. It's all janky. Your genetic code should be a sign of a physical disorder, such as a human's Huntington's disease, which is caused by an insertion mutation. But the new mutation you have does nothing, like, at all. Swap felt his magic run cold. Oh, and me and him are. Sai shrugged. It's like you mutated, Swap, but it show signs of birth. He got your DNA. It's just that he has no other person's DNA. But it looks like meiosis. Swap nodded, and after that he soon got released from the lab. He went home, his normal home, and was glad Papyrus wasn't there. He carried the baby to his room, tucking it into bed, smiling softly as it hugged one of his pillows. He had to take a smoke break. He felt disgusted as he pulled out the peck he refused to throw out. He felt disgusted as he went to the back of his home. He felt disgusted as he used his age-old lighter and breathed in poison. He felt disgusted as he snuggled back into his bed, his breath newly minty and his bones shaking as he tried to force himself to touch his biological child. He felt disgusted at the thought of killing the bacteria, which was obviously what it was. Bacteria. Anyways, hope you liked my cold reading of my story, Bacteria. If you have any recommendations on how to make this better, absolutely comment it. And yeah, bye guys.